Hello, and welcome back to the Engine Room podcast. My name is Frederik Saabye, and I'm your host. Today we have a little bit of an emergency episode because there is something going on with Google that we can't really put our finger on. And I'm no Google expert, so that's why I brought in our growth lead here at Sparkforce, Ethan.
Hey, thanks for bringing me on.
Of course.
We work in the same office space, so I don't think it's that difficult for you to take the invite. But I would like to say there are some interesting things going on in Google. I would not necessarily use the word emergency for this. But if you are a CFO looking at like what is marketing actually bringing in, why are the costs rising, there's some important things to look into.
So let's take them one by one. What's going on with Google right now? What is it that we're seeing across?
Yeah, so there's two main things, and I'll break them down one by one after. But I just want to highlight there's two main things that are going on in the Google ecosystem right now. One is something that I had actually been noticing alongside the paid search specialists here at Sparkforce. That brand costs are just going up. The CPCs have gone up, the CTRs have gone down over the past year, and I was like very thankful when Dream Data launched the report that said, okay, this isn't just a thing that you're experiencing. This is something going on, and so. I think historically a lot of marketeers would unfortunately use like the Google branded search conversions as a means of saying, oh, look, we're getting a lot of returns on our ad spend. Granted, people searching for your brand already are likely to convert on that. But that's something that's been going on. The other big thing that's been happening is that Google actually changed its advertising policy, I guess, in the middle of April, to the point where essentially you can now show up more than one time in any given auction. So when we're looking at auction insights to figure out like how competitive we are on the money keywords, the one that consistently bring in the SQLs, the ops, the close won revenue, you have a much more muddled view of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like with the second point, that sounds like I would be competing against myself a little bit in these auctions. Is that right?
I don't think you're necessarily competing against yourself. I mean, theoretically, technically, yes, but you're essentially paying. So if you were to search, I don't know, this is my favorite go-to as an example, marketing analytics platform. Usually you'll see a handful of companies. Sometimes you'll see like Adobe Analytics Suite, you'll see Funnel.io, one of our partners. You'll see a bunch of them. And usually it would be like listed 1, 2, 3 at the top. And then like if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, which who actually scrolls all the way down to the bottom of the page, you might see them again. And that is the main difference. But regardless of the fact that you are not scrolling all the way down to the bottom, that's still an eligible impression. And therefore, it is also an impression if it loads. You don't actually have to see it. So when you're looking at things, your search impression share metric is just going to be wildly distorted. So it's also possible that what you'll see is just a straight up decline in click-through rates just because you're appearing twice on the same page and people are only going to click once.
Yeah,
and oddly enough, like everything that we were taught about how Google auctions work, they factor in the relevance of the ad, the expected click-through rate, the landing page experience. Well, I think your expected click-through rate is going to drop if you're appearing twice, and that's sort of ultimately going to make the cost for every click, every impression that you're available a little more expensive because you're now paying more to get into that auction. Historically, if you're in that marketing analytics tool space, right? One of the big things that you'd want to ensure is that you're always showing up, right? You're there at least 30% of the time. Ideally, you're in the top impression share count. The problem now being that like 30% doesn't really give a sense of like, okay, are you in the top, the bottom, both? And then when you look at the top impression share rate, historically it's been the percentage of your impressions that are actually at the top of the page, the money spots, if you will. But now it's just the number of top impressions over your total impressions, which may have doubled, may have increased by 1.5. So there's no real way of accurately looking at, okay, what do I need to spend to be in these like top positions for the top keywords? And that's something that's really changing.
Yeah. So that sounds like a little bit of a, it might be a little wrong, but is that a little bit of a trust thing with Google? Are we now coming into a place where we can't really trust what we're getting back from Google?
I mean, you can still trust when people click. You can still trust when conversions come in. I think it becomes a larger issue when you're in these super niche categories that might only have, 500 impressions a month, and you don't actually know, or 500 queries, people searching this a month, and you don't actually know how many of these like queries you're showing up in, right? There's obviously been this trend with Google that, exact match is sort of traded into phrase match. I've literally worked with companies when you type, we wanted to bid on one specific thing, and when we type in a competitor's name, we trigger for that ad, which doesn't make any sense. No. So there's been like an eroding of trust already, but I think what we did when we actually looked into it is that we noticed that like the top impression share didn't really add up with the number of like top impressions that we were getting, and there's just a bunch of unaccounted for impressions because of the fact that there's all of a sudden double counting due to the fact that you can appear in the top and the bottom.
I remember you showed some data internally here. We don't have to go into it, but some of them had almost upwards of 7,000, a discrepancy of almost 7,000 impressions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's what we would expect to see on the top versus the bottom, that discrepancy being 7,000. Obviously, that's going to be impacted based on like how much you're spending, how like are you doing broad match, are you doing phrase match, are you doing exact match? I think it seems like the exact match is a little less affected, but that's also that this has only been out for 2.5 months, as we're talking in the beginning of July here. But yeah, we're seeing roughly upwards of 30% discrepancies between what we would expect to be seeing as top impressions versus like based on the impression share, but then when you break down the numbers and spit out what Google is saying, you're missing quite a few. Yeah.
Then you also had a point on brand cost rising, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is causing this?
I mean, there's a bunch of things, and some of this also probably floats into what's been going on the other side with the change in the you can appear at the top, you can appear at the bottom, but ultimately, I mean, let's be real. We're talking about paid search in a world of growing LLM search. People are no longer searching as much on Google to find the information. They're going to Perplexity, they're going to ChatGPT, they're going to Gemini, and of course we have the AI Overviews, which oftentimes appear below the ads, but sometimes they appear above the ads, right? So you're competing with that for clicks, what we're seeing is that click-through rates are dropping, which sort of would make sense if you can just see that coming up front, but also it's possible that there's just less search volumes coming through, which has also led to, in many cases, this is more anecdotal than being backed with firm data, like in the case of the Dream Data report, but I've seen an uptick of competitors starting to bid on the clients I'm working for's brand name as a keyword. And I have now had to file, I guess, 3 trademark complaints against companies in the past quarter. Usually I'd be doing that like once a year, but now it's aggressive. And I think part of that is, people are seeing search volumes decline in other places. So they're like, okay, well, this other company is doing it. Like, let's just bid on their search terms. So that's an aspect that's coming through, and of course, the cynical part of me sort of would have me thinking that Google might just be artificially inflating the cost of doing advertising. They're probably looking at their their Q2 or earnings report and being like, oh, search, our money maker is starting to take a hit with people using ChatGPT, Perplexity, all the above. What are we going to do? Oh, well, we'll just raise the threshold ever so slightly. Again, can't back that with anything. But that's another distinct possibility as search volumes start to decline. I mean, you can see all the LinkedIn influencers screaming to the rooftops that LLM search is going to surpass traditional search by 2028. Who knows if that's the timeline, if that will happen, but it's something that I would be shocked if the guys at Google aren't really factoring in.
Yeah, for sure. I also think in terms of the rising brand cost, right? One thing that you could expect is that if something like, and I think we want to get into the AI overview and just touch on what that is briefly, but if something like that comes and you would typically like have your high intent searches in like category pricing or category tool or something like that, that would then just get replaced by an AI overview, then you would probably lead into something like bidding on your competitors, because now that also becomes kind of high intent as somebody is looking for that solution. Do you think that's probably some of the dynamics that could also factor in there?
Sorry, repeat that question one more time.
I think it was more so just a statement that it's also just like search behavior that's kind of changing, right?
Yeah.
That the clicks that you would typically get on your high intent searches get replaced by an AI overview. And then now your second highest intent stuff becomes your competitor, right?
Yep.
All right. But can we just like talk about this AI overview thing? So what is it briefly? And then what are some of the implications that we're looking at in Sparkforce, and some of the implications of like, now this is here, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, so the AI overview, if you haven't seen them already, chances are if you're watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, you've been on Google, but it is, a thing that appears towards the top of the search engine results page. If you ask it a question, usually it gives you a LLM-based answers, pulling in citations from across the various web sources, right? Oftentimes, a lot of what it's pulling from would be highly ranked from an SEO perspective already. So a lot of the things that you need to be focusing on for SEO are probably going to relate in there. But other things that we've seen is that they're pulling in information from things like Quora, from Reddit, and from other sort of highly trusted websites, Wikipedia obviously being a major one, that gives information to synthesize, what it is you might be looking for. And it might automatically give you, if you're looking for marketing analytics tool, it might be giving you like, here's some of the top ones. So that's what's going on.
Okay. But if we then go into like the implications for advertisers here, is there anything, the way we are operating ads, the way we're looking at, measuring, obviously we want to go as far down the funnel as possible, but there's also leading indicators and all that stuff. Is there anything that we, still early days, right? AI overview is also fairly new. Is there like any early signals to how we need to change what we do, how we do Google ads? Is there any, and this is probably also going to be anecdotal and like incomplete data and all that stuff, but just gut feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things to look at is, does it even make sense to be spending on brand search? If you look at the Dream Data report that I keep mentioning here, according to them, 7% of all B2B advertising budgets go to brand search. Again, this is people that are actively bidding on your campaign or on your keywords. You're bidding on your own keyword, right? People are, if they're searching Sparkforce, chances are they want Sparkforce, not someone else. Sure. So in a lot of the cases where we don't see any active competitors, like why waste the budget if the brand, the product that we're working for is already appearing at the top of the organic results page. I think the case is really in the trickier spots where there is a lot of competition. And that's something we're starting to experiment with in terms of running blackout tests in specific geos to see, okay, we've had this baseline of X number of branded SQLs or opportunities coming in every single month. Like if we just stop bidding on the brand, does that, do those all convert to direct or organic traffic sources, or what actually happens? So that's something to look into. I think again, for the case of a CFO saying like, what did marketing actually attributably bring in? This is really bad news for a marketer that's going up against a CFO on that front, because you can't necessarily say we spent this much on Google search. We're getting this many opportunities, and no one's asking you the follow-up, well, how much of that was branded? Because a lot of those branded conversions, they're just going to become more and more expensive, so your CPAs are going to go up, which again opens up the question, what happens if you just don't spend on brand? Is it possible that those are still going to convert if you've been running all of your awareness level and consideration level funnel on LinkedIn? Ideally, you are still that number 1 spot, right? Yes, and sure. Of course, there's that infamous Bain and Google study from 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't know how old it is, but it still seems like we're talking about it like it just came out yesterday. That if you are, if someone's buying a piece of software, chances are they already have a list, 3 to 4 software vendors on the front of their mind, and 80% of the time, one of those gets the deal, right? So is not bidding on your own brand gonna influence that so heavily? Maybe. Maybe not. That's why you got to test it. So
for sure. Okay, so for now, it doesn't really change a lot with how we do. We just need to be a little bit more critical if Google Ads is really the right play anymore, or if it's also becoming more zero-click, like something like LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably will see a trend in the zero-click direction. I don't think it's going to be overnight. I mean, I still think since these changes started rolling out, we have been working with clients, and we've already seen leads come in, ops flow in, and in some cases with a client we started working with at the start of April, there's already been a handful of closed-won deals directly out of paid search, right? Yeah. Don't think it's dead by any stretch of the imagination. It's just becoming a lot more competitive. It's harder to understand how the competitive metrics even look like when you go into the auctions insights. But there is,
All right. So final question for today. If we're going a little bit into like, fortune teller, maybe that's not the right word, Nostradamus mode, how do you think it's going to evolve, all this?
I mean, quite honestly, I have no idea. And I don't want to sound like one of those assholes on LinkedIn that's saying like search is dead, or cold outbound is dead, or email outbound is dead. So I don't necessarily want to predict something that we have no idea the future of. I mean, obviously, what you can see is that the trends are that people are using LLMs more like search engines over time. Does that mean that ChatGPT is going to start running ads in their system? I don't know. Maybe not. I just think that we're in for a world of shakeup. Where it goes, I'm sorry if you're looking for me to be Nostradamus. I am not your guy.
Okay, so thank you, Ethan, for coming, and thank you for maybe bringing our pulses a little bit down, so not as much as an emergency as we feared it might be. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Cheers.